All right, folks, welcome back to How to File for Divorce in Florida, Part 4. Uh, just to cover the disclaimers as usual, this stuff is not legal advice and it does not create an attorney client privilege or relationship. This stuff is not so you can act as your own attorney pro se. This is to help you get some understanding and information about the complexity of filing for divorce in Florida and some of the headache and convolution that can go into it at times and things that you should be aware of that you may have no clue about. Um, so now we're really starting to dig into some of the law. As you'll commonly see in the materials I draft, I cite two cases. All right, Montano v. Montano is one of the ones where I cited for where do you file for divorce in Florida? Because what's important about um, really every case in Florida is jurisdiction. As you'll see, where the former wife resided in Florida for 6 months prior to filing the petition for dissolution of marriage. All right, guess what? And the Guatemalan husband was properly served by constructive notice. The trial court properly exercised in rem jurisdiction to dissolve the Guatemalan marriage. What the heck does that mean? Well, on its face, once the wife was living in Florida for 6 months, at least 6 months, and intended to reside there permanently, the courts of Florida had jurisdiction over the marriage as far as American courts are concerned at that point. Okay. Now, constructive notice, or what we really can also call constructive service, is another headache. We're going to talk about that in later material. Okay. So, and that can also be found on this page where it's talked about at length. All right. So, really, from there, once you have jurisdiction in the state of Florida, it's all about the county. And let's just say, for sake of argument, you're living in Seminole County and you're done. You want a divorce, you want out. Well, if next week you get into an apartment in Orange County and file for divorce, well, the other spouse can go, well, I got the kids, so jurisdiction should be moved back here to Seminole County. It shouldn't be in Orange County. Arguments of that nature can be, well, they don't intend to truly live in Orange County permanently. They're just doing it to be a pain in the neck. And this happens. You'll have people who will move from Polk County to Broward County, and then they'll file in Broward County for divorce, and they'll have only been there 2 or 3 months, and the person's like, wait a minute. And a lot of times, it's about raising an objection, really filing a motion to transfer venue for forum non-convenes. But that's really complex stuff you're going to want to talk about with the attorney you're having a free consultation with, okay? Safe to say, if both you and your spouse live in the same county, you're fine. Okay, if you've lived there for over 6 months, you're fine. If you've lived in over Florida 6 months, you're fine. You just got to have an ID to show to the judge that shows you've resided there for over 6 months, a driver's license. If you show up with a Pennsylvania or other states' driver's license and it doesn't show, that could be a headache. You want to have a Florida driver's license, basically, or at least a Florida ID card that shows you've been residing in Florida for at least 6 months, because you may not have it. Some people don't have driver's licenses. They come from New York City, they never had to drive a car, so they might just have an ID. Well, as long as the ID shows you've been living for 6 months, you should be okay. You also see that I do analyze some of these cases. I do go a little bit more into explaining them. So if you have a question about a case or you're just curious to read more about the case, you can always do that as well. You can also go to the site source material that I pull it from. That one was on case text. Okay, usually I pull from Google Scholar, but this one was from case text. So you can read a bit of the case law and stuff like that. Now you're going to see the UCCJA. Well, for those of you who have kids, that's incredibly important. All right. Because Florida's jurisdiction over children, once the kids have been out of the state for more than 6 months, Florida loses jurisdiction over the children. Why is that important? Well, more than a few times I've had people go, my spouse has disappeared with the kids. I can't find them. How long ago? Like 4 months. Okay. Well, are you pretty sure you're getting a divorce? Yeah. Guess what? You need to go ahead and file for divorce to preserve jurisdiction. Because if they go to another state, like say Texas, for example, and they reside there, okay, or they've been residing there the entire time. Once they hit 6 months, the UCCJA gives Texas jurisdiction over the children. So you're then fighting a Texas divorce case in Texas while you're residing in Florida. You're going to be at a big disadvantage. But again, this is something to address to an attorney during a free legal consultation. Okay. I touch a little bit on venue transfer just to try and explain the law and Florida statute that goes into it, stuff like that. Um, we're just going to get into a lot of complexity on this issue. And the idea of these recordings isn't to really delve deep into it as much as it's to kind of try and make it a little bit more easy to comprehend. Try and make it a little more lay, make it a little more simple. Okay, and go, okay, that's what the guy's trying to say. Instead of you trying to read and going, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Because to me, if I'm looking at an instruction sheet and I don't have a clue what it says, I'm calling an expert. Some people, they look at the law, they don't have a clue what they're doing, they still do it on their own. And I go, oh, that's a terrible idea. You should at least talk to a lawyer, at least get a free consultation, find out what your rights are. As we touched on in the first part, very briefly in Florida Statute 61.16, you can get an award of attorney's fees from the other party. Sometimes law firms will take your case on contingency. Sometimes they'll work out a deal with you. There's all kinds of things to do with it. I'll include a link in the description about possibly getting an award of attorney's fees and stuff to discuss with the attorneys. So I like to try and keep these trim and simple. So we're going to talk about more rules to be aware of per Florida divorce law, that kind of situation. We're going to touch on that in the next one because we're over 5 minutes.